Young men are passing out the gift assessments. If you didn't get one coming in, they're coming down the aisle and they'll be glad to provide you with one of those. You won't need to look at that right at the beginning of the lesson. At the beginning, we're going to look at a couple of passages that talk to us about spiritual gifts and just consider the idea of spiritual gifts themselves. And the first one we'll go to is the one Braden just read for us there in Romans chapter 12. When Paul writes in verse 3 of chapter 12, "For through the grace given to me," that word grace in the Greek language is the same basic word that we see the word gifts being translated into the English word gifts. So grace, as we understand it, something that God gives us that we haven't earned, is the idea of a gift, something God gives us that we haven't earned. Now, we have traditions of our own. We believe that we are due gifts on our birthdays and at Christmas. Well, just expect it. I'm going to get a gift. It's my birthday. I'm going to get a gift. It's Christmas. That's just traditions that we have developed. But this all originates from God, who says, I want to give you gifts, and these gifts are going to help fulfill your life. And not only that, they're going to help fulfill my will in the world. And so every one of us are given gifts. We are not given today miraculous spiritual gifts. There's a difference between spiritual gifts that are for today and those spiritual gifts that were miraculous in days past. Nevertheless, the gifts we are given are from God, and He's acted supernaturally, if you will, to put those gifts in our hands. And there's a list of them that Paul provides here in the 12th chapter. And it's a brief list. I don't know that this list is meant to be exhaustive. In other words, I don't know that all of the gifts God provides are listed here, but here they are. The first one is prophecy. Now, we may think, well, you've got to be inspired of God to be a prophet, and that's what we understand about the prophets we read about in the New Testament. But the gift of prophecy, the idea of prophecy, is someone who has the ability to speak pertinently on some issue that is at hand. And you know, some people are gifted at that. They just have a way of putting things into words, and we really appreciate when something happens and you go to the newspaper or you go online, you get on Facebook, you go someplace and somebody has written about what is happening and you go, that's it. If I could put into words my feelings, that's what I would write. That's basically the gift of prophecy. We're not talking about someone through whom God is speaking as He spoke through the prophets, and yet there is a gift of people who are able to address situations, and that might be you. And you might be thinking, boy, I wish I had that. Well, maybe you don't, but maybe you've got another gift. And actually, there's no maybe to it. You have a gift, and it may not be that one. Nevertheless, we shouldn't get into the trap of thinking too much like human beings and considering one gift above another. Because this is what we typically do. We look at what somebody else is able to do, and, boy, I wish I could do that. Likely at the same time, they're looking at you and going, I wish I could do what they do. Because this is the nature of gifts. They are from God, and so they are extremely valuable. And everybody wants to do what everybody else seems to be doing. But God doesn't give us the same gifts. Perhaps you've noticed that. After prophecy is serving, service. And he says, if service is your gift, do it to the proportion of your faith. Serving. Some people like to do things for others, and they like to do it behind the scenes or unknown to others. They don't want to be in the limelight. They don't want to be out in the open. Sometimes I'm surprised when I go to somebody and say, wow, you did a great thing here. I would like to recognize you. No, I don't want any recognition. I just want to keep doing that. Okay, great, fantastic. You might have the gift of service if that's you. The rest of these, you think about them, exhortation. Are you able to exhort, to encourage someone, to bring forth a word that is good for others, that's true and that's honest, and that makes a difference positively in the lives and in the thinking of others. Someone who gives. I wish I was a giver. I'm a stingy grunt, you know. I just don't want to turn loose of anything. I even for myself, I go to Bass Pro and I go to Cabela's and I look for the cheapest stuff I can find. And I know after experience, that's not the best way to do it, but that's just my nature. I don't want to be like that, but I don't have that gift. But some of you do. Some of you have a generous, open hand, and you just can't wait to find something good to give your time to give your expertise to give your money to give your resources to. Maybe you have the gift of giving, and I'm grateful for those who do. Teaching, leading. You look at all of these, and I'm not going to go through each one and give an example. I think you're smart enough that you can figure out what these gifts are like. But through these examples, I think we get an idea of how much we need people with these gifts in the church. And whatever your gift is, it is needed in the church. God does not give you an unnecessary gift. God does not give you a gift that is not useful to yourself and to others. Everything He does for us by way of gifts is what He wants us to have to accomplish His will in the world. I know I use food a lot as illustrations, but I can't help thinking that, boy, this is a great opportunity to use food as a great illustration about how gifts work in the Lord's people, among the Lord's people. I want you to think of the perfect breakfast. For you, it's probably a little different than what it is for somebody else, and that's fine. Somebody might say, if I just had a watermelon, a good, crisp, sweet watermelon. And we might think, well, that's just one thing. Well, not actually. What elements does a watermelon have to be a good breakfast for you if you really want just watermelon for breakfast? Does it need to be crispy? After all, who likes a mushy watermelon? Anybody in here like mushy watermelon? Does it need to be sweet? Oh, I like sweet watermelon. You ever get a watermelon and you just say, I got a watermelon, and you slice into it, you go right to the heart of it, right to the center, the best part, and you take a bite of it, I might as well be eating wax. But then you get a piece of it, and it's like, oh, yes. Now, I'm not trying to be flighty or lightweight, but do you ever take a bite of a piece of fruit or something like that, and you think, God is the one who's provided this. Nobody else can make a watermelon like God can make a watermelon when it's a good watermelon. And it doesn't matter what it is. Now, you take the other traditional kind of breakfast. What are the elements of a traditional kind of breakfast? You've got watermelon, it's got to have all those other elements. Besides, it's not only sweet and crispy, probably you want it cold. Anybody want warm watermelon? I mean, it's okay if you do. And then there are those heretics that put salt on their watermelon. I don't know who those people are, but my goodness. If you got a good watermelon, it doesn't need salt. But when you talk about the melon itself, it's not just the flavor and the texture. It's got all those nutrients in it. Vitamins and minerals and fiber, all that stuff. There's so many things that come together, so many different elements that come together that make a piece of watermelon what a piece of watermelon ought to be. But then the traditional breakfast. What do you start with? Maybe some pancakes. Oh yeah, pancakes. Well, what do you have to make pancakes right? You got to have a big old Larapin chunk of butter on there, and then you got to have some maple syrup. And I don't go for this corn syrup stuff. I like the real 100% maple syrup. I know it's a little runny. That's all right. It's the flavor I'm going for. How about you? Maybe you like the other stuff. Well, okay, you can have the other stuff because I'm going to eat the 100% maple syrup. Maybe it's not or pancakes for you. Maybe it's waffles. Or maybe it's French toast. And somebody's out there going, why do I have to choose? Why can't I have all three? Okay, have all three. It's your heart attack. At any rate, are you going to be satisfied with just pancakes or waffles or French toast? How about some eggs? Do you like your eggs? You want eggs scrambled? I like eggs scrambled. I really like them easy, over easy. That's what I'm trying to do, over easy. But I don't want them over easy unless I have some good wheat toast to sop up that yolk with. And you think, Marty, you're just talking about food. You're wasting our time. No, I don't think so. When you think about a proper breakfast or any kind of a meal, It's going to have all kinds of elements coming together. Because no matter what you've got for breakfast, if you don't have a good cup of coffee to go with it, forget it. That's the way it is. That's the way we look at things. And it's not just food. How about a vacation? What elements do you have to make a vacation what you really want your vacation to be? And I know, vacation, you don't have time for a vacation. Well, how about a single evening at home? What elements have to come together for you to have a really good single evening at home? Do you want your family to be there? Or would you like to have maybe just some time alone? That's not being too selfish. I'd like to have some alone time. If you're alone or if you're family, however it is, what are you going to do? You're going to play a board game? You're going to watch some TV? You're going to read a book together? What are you going to do? You're going to go out and do yard work? We all have these pictures of what a perfect evening at home is, or what a perfect vacation is, or what a perfect breakfast is. God has a picture of His people. And His picture includes all of these gifts. And I thought about that food idea, and I thought, what about a bowl of stew? What do you picture what's the first thing you see when you think about a bowl of stew? See, I'm thinking of beef stew. You might be thinking of some different kind of stew. What do you see? First thing that pops into my mind is a big old juicy hunk of carrot. That's just what I see. It's not necessarily my favorite thing, but it just seems the most obvious. And I think it's the orange color that really appeals in that brown sauce that makes the stew. And then if you're going to have carrots, what else do you have to have? Duh, you got to have potatoes. Oh, people after my own heart. What flavors your stew? Well, of course, a big old hunk of solid beef. And your beef's got to have some fat. If it doesn't have any fat, the stew's not going to be right. Well, what do you thicken it with? Well, see, you don't really think about that unless you're the chef. But a lot of stew is thickened with a little bit of flour or maybe some cornstarch. But have you ever had stew that had all those elements, but it was still kind of, because you got to have some salt. You don't see the salt, but you sure do miss it if it's not there, don't you? What about herbs and spices? I mean, there's so many things come together just to make a bowl of stew. And the Lord's people are exactly the same way. Paul talks about the church as a body with all the different parts of the body. That's a fantastic illustration. I know it is, because that's what the Holy Spirit inspired Paul to write about. So we use any of these illustrations and we find out, that's the way it is in life. You got to have several wonderful things come together to make just about anything. And it's so true in the church. Whatever gift you have, we need here at Choctaw. Whatever ability you have, whatever skill you have, we need it here. Whatever godly character trait you have, we need it here. And you may not know what your gifts are. Well, that's what these assessments are for. This is a wonderful tool that's been developed years ago by a couple of guys that worked with us here, Steve and Bud. Anybody remember them? Anybody here old enough to remember them? That's going back a little ways. I'm pretty sure they developed this. If they didn't develop it, at least they found it. They knew to give it to us and provide it. So we've got this assessment as a tool. And Hal, if you want to go ahead and put that up on the screen. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it's right there. How long has that been there? Spiritual gifts assessment. I don't even look at this. Spiritual gifts assessment. That's what we're looking at. And we're not going to do this through the time we've got left in the sermon this morning, because it's 112 questions. But it's 112 personal questions that asks you things that you're supposed to assess about yourself. You need to be honest. Don't cheat on this. Nobody's going to see this but you, unless the government mandates that you turn in your assessment forms. We want to see what your gifts are. And this assessment is designed to determine your gifts. Now, it's not inspired. This is just a tool that some folks have created, but it seems to work pretty well. I've taken it a couple times way in the past, and it seems to assess pretty well. The response of 5 means what this question is asking is almost always true about you. Almost always true. And then conversely, the 1, it's 1 through 5, If you give a 1 response, that's what you give when what you're reading about is hardly ever true. It's almost never true about you. Now, there's a response directly in the middle. It's a 3. Do your best to avoid answering with any 3s, because if you answer with too many 3s, it'll just pull everything to the middle and you won't see which direction you tend to go at all. One of the things that usually compels us to answer with a 3 is because we are humble people. But don't be falsely humble. Be honest. Be true. Be true to yourself. Read this. Yep, that's me. And if you can gravitate towards a 5, that's good. If you can gravitate towards a 1, that's good. You're trying to get an accurate assessment of how you are. Now, when you get to the backside of it, I've got one. I don't expect you to be able to see it. I wanted you to have this in your hands so you could look at it for yourself. What happened here? Scoring your response. On the funny-looking page, that's the one that has all those little boxes with the triangles. That's where you score your response. You go and you answer all 112 questions. Bob?
We've noticed that some people don't have that page.
What?
If you don't have that page, let us know. We'll get you that page.
Those are the people who lack any gifts whatsoever. So if you don't have that page, I'm sorry. You're just no. We'll try to make sure that you get that page. We've got this, of course, as a resource, and we don't want you to be without it. So for whatever reason you're without it, that's a mistake and an oversight, but we'll make sure that you get it. But use your X-ray, not your X-ray, your Zoom vision. That's what it looks like right there. I probably should have taken a picture of this and put it in the, I still want to say overhead, I'm old school, PowerPoint, but I did not do that. At any rate, you'll just put the number of your response in the appropriate box. It's pretty self-explanatory. Then you add up all those numbers down in the bottom where it says A, B, C, D, the letters across the bottom. And then you plot those responses in the spiritual gifts graph at the bottom of that page. And when you do that, that will give you some idea of where you stand with regard to each one of these gifts. You'll see if you are an evangelist. You'll see if you have leadership skills. You'll see if you have shepherding skills. You'll see if you tend to be a mercy person or someone who has the gift of giving. You'll see whatever it is. If you're a hospitality person, this ought to show it up. If you answer these questions honestly and accurately, you ought to be able to see at the end of this what your gifts are. And with knowing what your gifts are, you might be able to understand yourself a little bit better. You might be saying, oh, that's why I do that all the time. And it's probably something about yourself that you discount. Because we have this idea that it's not work unless we don't enjoy it. Frankly, that's a dumb idea. If you enjoy it, it's the same thing whether you don't enjoy it or not. It's work. It's accomplishing something. If you're being generous and you love to be generous and somebody else is being generous but they don't really care for it, it's the same work. But if you enjoy being generous, well, that's what a gift is. Doesn't a gift make you happy? Anytime somebody says, I've got a gift for you, well, I can't say that, can I? Because sometimes it's a come on. But when somebody I trust says, I have a gift for you, I go, hey, I know you. I trust you. This is going to be good. I'm going to enjoy this. At any rate, this is what we're trying to assess is our giftedness in these different areas. I want you to look with me in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Paul is talking to the church here about gifts again, and he gives a list of gifts that are miraculous, but they're still called spiritual gifts. There's spiritual gifts in Romans 12 that are not miraculous, and there's spiritual gifts in 1 Corinthians 12 that are miraculous. And this is what he says here. Verse 4, 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 4. There are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. You see that variety? You get your pancakes and your French toast and scrambled eggs, and you got all that stuff. You got your coffee and your orange juice, whatever you want to have. There's a variety, and variety is what makes it all come together. Same Spirit provides all that variety. There are varieties of ministries and the same Lord. What is your gift? Your gift is a ministry. You are in the ministry. God gives you a gift, and through your gift, you minister to others. You may not think of it as a ministry, but that's how God sees it, because He gave it to you to do good for others, and if you're doing good for others, you are ministering. But it's the same Spirit, same Lord. There are varieties of effects, but the same God who works all things in all person. Varieties of effects. If you have the gift of exhortation, you might cause somebody with the effect of your gift to stand up and take notice. Oh, I need to get hold of myself. I need to take a harder look at myself. It might not be as pleasant as somebody else who has the gift of mercy, who can give comfort. They are just as good gift, one's as good as the other, but it might not have the same impact. But both impacts are good. You can go back to the food analogy. Does a bite of watermelon have the same impact on you as a sip of coffee? But who wants to give up one or the other? I really hate those questions where if you had to choose between this, well, I don't want to choose. I want it all. And this is God saying, I'm giving it all to you. I'm giving it all to the church. Now, you as an individual might not have all the gifts, but you've got them in the fact that you're in the Lord's church, and you've got brothers and sisters that have these gifts. And so in that way, we've got all the gifts. But to each one, he says, is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. That's what this is about. It's about the common good. 1 Corinthians 12:8. For to one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, to another the word of knowledge according to the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the one Spirit, and to another the effecting of miracles, and to another prophecy, and to another the distinguishing of spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, and to another the interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit works all these, distributing to each one individually, just as He wills. For even as the body is one, and yet has many members, and all the members of the body, though they are many, are one body, so also is Christ. Woke up about a week and a half ago and my knee hurt. I went to the doc and he says, you got cellulitis. I didn't know what cellulitis was. I thought it was something fat people got. Well, hey, I'm not immune in that case. He said, no, that's an infection. Well, what happened? Well, you got down on your knees and apparently got some bacteria in your knee, and sure enough, I had been doing something on my knees. It got bacteria in my knees, got an infection. So my knee has been kind of bummed for the last week and a half or so. You don't realize how much you like to have a good knee until one of them's not working right. It doesn't even have to be that. Have you ever got one of those little tiny things that come up on your finger right behind just a little piece of skin comes up? Man, that hurts like fire. It seems like everything you do now with that finger, you're hitting that thing. It's going, oh man, that hurts. You ever had a corn on your toe? I mean, it doesn't matter. All these little ills, these little pains, these little difficulties we have, they impact a part of the body, and once it impacts that part of the body, you realize, wow, that part of the body, you realize how important that part of the body was. Sometimes you'll get a thump on the head, and that little thump on the head will impact that muscle down, and it'll come down and make your jaw hurt. You go, wow, it's just a little thing on my head. Our bodies, there's not a thing in and about our bodies that God didn't create that we need. Evolutionary theory, and those who believe in it, came up with a list of appendages and body parts that we have left over from evolution. And the more they've studied all of those parts that they said were left over from evolution, you know what they've determined? oh, it's going to function. I remember one guy said, you don't need your tailbone. That's when we were monkeys and had tails. And another guy said, well, all right, I'll pay whatever it takes to have your tailbone removed. And he didn't do it. Because you need your tailbone. My goodness, every muscle in the back is tied down. That's the anchor for all the muscles in your back. Your appendix used to be one of those organs that they said, oh, you don't need that, that's left over from evolution. And then they found out, oh no, your appendix is very vital to your immune system in your body. It's just that we didn't know. And when you don't know, sometimes you go about making foolish speculations. And sometimes we look at one another and we go, well, I don't know what your gift is. Well, don't make a foolish speculation just because you can't see their gift. Some folks are late bloomers, and some people are like the seasoning in a bowl of beef stew. You don't see the seasoning for the most part, do you? But you take a bite of it and you'll, oh yeah, that's there. That's the way we are. That's the way the Lord's church is. He gives us all gifts, and He intends for us to use them. And when we use them, you see what happens. Because this church puts its gifts to work. And every time something good happens here, every time something is accomplished and we look at it and we go, that's wonderful, it's because somebody's been using their gifts. And that's what we want to keep on happening. Not for our glory, but for the Lord's. So, this gift assessment is yours. If you don't have any part of this, you can, any page, if there's something missing, let us know and we'll make sure you get what you need. And you can take this home and you can have fun. You'll probably enjoy filling this out. I know I did. And you'll ask yourself questions about yourself. When you see those questions, you'll go, well, do I really do that? Or do I not? This is kind of a self-assessment as well as it is a gift assessment. This is not something you need to bring back to us. This is for your benefit, so that you as an individual know what your gifts are. Good Lord willing, 2 weeks from today, going to have a lesson on involvement, and we'll make the involvement forms available to you. And maybe knowing what your gifts are will help you select things to be involved in. Because you can select something to be involved in, you go, I really should be involved in that. I hate that. I don't like that, but I'll be involved in it because that's what every good Christian does. They involve themselves in things they hate. I don't think so. God gives you gifts. And yes, sometimes we need to do things that might not be associated with our gifts. I don't want to give you the impression that that's all we should ever do is just what we feel gifted in. But there are marvelous things that each one of us can do right here at Choctaw that will be using your gifts and that will make you feel great and feel a part. And I know I don't talk that much about feelings. I don't think we should let our feelings guide our lives. But God gives us feelings for a reason. And when we do His will, I know you have noticed as I have, man, I just feel so much better. And when I use a gift that He's given me in doing His will, I feel great. It's like, wow, this is what I was put here for. And believe me, however you see yourself, I fully believe that there is a reason in the mind of God why you are here. God does not do things by accident. You look back through His history that He's provided, and things do not happen by accident. And whatever happens that we might think was not originally the will of God, He works it into His will. That's why Paul could write in Romans chapter 8, and he's already said it before what we read today in chapter 12. He said, God works all things together for good. Isn't that what it says? All things. That includes the things, especially is about the things that we might think are not good. God works everything together. So you've got gifts, and He's doing His best to guide you through His Spirit and His Word into putting those gifts together for good for you and to His people and to provide salt and light in this world. We're going to stand in just a minute and sing a song that is, in fact, a prayer in a way. We're asking you to respond if you need to respond this morning. If you need to obey the gospel of Jesus Christ, We're ready to take your confession of your faith in Him and bury you in this water, and you'll come up walking in newness of life through the blood of Jesus Christ. If you need the prayers of this congregation, we want to hear from you because we want to serve. We want to use our gifts in blessing you this morning. Let's stand and sing our song of invitation for anybody who might like to come forward.